Today we're looking at the Tron 80 digital whoop from T-Motor. Now when you hear the word whoop, you probably think of one of two things. You might think of something like this. This is a Mobula 7 75mm tiny whoop, and the main characteristics of something like this are it has some kind of plastic prop guards, and it's so small you can basically fly it anywhere. It'll be very unthreatening to fly around people as well. They're so light they don't really do any damage to themselves or anything that they might accidentally hit. On the other end of the scale you have something like this. This is an iFlight Bumblebee, and this is a Cinewhoop, and the main characteristic of this is you can carry like a full-size GoPro on it, so you can get some nice HD footage that you can run through REELSTEADY, get that nice cinematic look. So if we were to put these side to side, then the T-Motor Tron 80 sits somewhere in the middle, like here. It's 80mm, so it's a little bit bigger than a sort of tiny whoop, but it is definitely way smaller than a 3-inch Cinewhoop build like this. So there is a bit of a story as to why my Tron 80 is in so many pieces, and to find out why we have to go back to when they first sent me one, which was a few months ago. So before these came out, T-Motor sent me one to test and do a video on, and when I first got it I thought that the main sort of use case of this whoop would have been sort of for the more cinematic stuff. With the sort of arrival of naked GoPros and the SMO 4K cameras, it seemed like this would be a good fit for that. So when they gave it me, they did provide an STL for a mount for the Insta360 SMO 4K camera, and that's this right here. The problem is I don't have an Insta360 SMO 4K, so I made a little modification and came up with this, which is kind of a similar type of thing. It mounts in the same way with 2 screws and this little clip, but it's designed for the naked GoPro with the Beta FPV case. So then I went to fly it around the woods, and I couldn't get any stable footage out of it. I was basically getting some kind of jello in the footage that was unstabilizable. Is that a word? Unstabilizable? Anyway, I was getting footage that couldn't be stabilized by REELSTEADY. So I got in touch with T-Motor and said, I have a jello problem. Do you think there's some kind of tune you could provide? Because it was still just on the stock Betaflight tune at this point. There hadn't been like a factory tune for it. They said they were working on it, and then they went on Chinese New Year. So it's going to be a couple of weeks before I got a tune from T-Motor that would maybe get rid of these jello problems. So in the meantime, I decided to have some fun with it. Now the original spec of the flight controller is an F4 HD 2 to 3S, and it has a 13 amp ESC. And the motors are 8000 kV, which is quite a high kV even for 3S. So in my infinite wisdom, I decided I would try this thing on 4S. I know that was probably a bit of a silly idea, but it was really fun. You can tell from this footage here that it was totally handling its own, but the only problem is the sort of integrity of this prop guard was definitely not designed for freestyle crashes when you're pushing those motors way beyond what they're supposed to be doing. So this thing was fast, it was nippy, I was not held back at all in any freestyle, and yeah, I was just having loads of fun with it, but obviously I was crashing a lot. So bits of damage started to happen to the frame here and there, and then T-Motor got back to me with a tune. They said, hey, we've got you a tune, if you want to try it, this should help. At this point the frame was in a little bit of disarray. It wasn't quite as bad as this, but it was in a few different pieces. So I put the tune on anyway and then took it for a flight, and the thing did a flyaway. Obviously there was no integrity left on the frame, so there's vibrations all over the place, and it wasn't going to fly well no matter what.
I want pro tune on.
It's kind of like it flies away, but like you said, like a slow flyaway.
Yeah.
Like it's actually trying to escape. So I sent them a little video of the flyaway, and they just kind of laughed in my face and said, look at the state of that thing. There's no way that's going to fly. So they sent me 3 new prop guards. I don't know why they sent me 3. I don't know if they think I'm going to crash a lot again, or they just assume that's what I'm like. But they also said that this is a slightly different blend of plastic. So the prototype one that I got was actually much weaker than what this is supposed to be. So in the production model and the one that you get, you can expect to get better prop guards than the ones that I had. So with all that out the way, I have everything I need here to rebuild this thing, put it in this new frame, and put the correct tune on, use the correct amount of cells on the battery. So we'll go back to using a 3S battery with this, and then we're going to take it for a proper rip and see if we can get some actual decent jello-free footage that we can stabilize. Alright, I've replaced the frame, and now it's looking a little bit more like what you would get if you bought one of these. I do like the blue frame, props to T-Motor, very nice colour, complements the pink TPU mount that I've used for the naked GoPro very nicely. So let's just talk over the components of this build and what makes it a little bit different. So the main board is an all-in-one. It's a T-Motor F4 flight controller with a 13 amp BL S 4-in-1 ESC. For the VTX, it's got a Caddx Vista inside it. It's mounted really nicely in the bottom of this frame, so it kind of becomes a little bit structural, but the Vista itself, the other side of it has had the heatsink removed, so it is a little bit lighter than a normal stock Caddx Vista. I don't know if it really changes the weight too much, but you know, it's a nice little touch. The flight controller itself uses a USB-C port, which is nice to see, something a little bit more modern. But what is especially cool is the position of it. So it sticks up through the top of the frame here, which means that it is accessible even when you have it fully built. So that gets around that problem that existed on the MR95X. Once you'd built that up, the USB port was actually inside the frame, so you couldn't get at it once the whole thing was built. The motors are F1103 8000 kV motors, and these are the V2s from T-Motor. They do sell them separately, so if you happen to damage one, then you can get them from the website. In fact, the carbon top plate, the prop guards, and the motors are all sort of specific for this quad, but they are all available as spares, so that's good. The props it uses are the standard 60mm gem fan 4 blades, so they're really easy to get just about anywhere. The camera is the Caddx Nebula Nano, which is the smallest one that they do for the Vista. It is slightly weaker than the Nebula Pro and the standard DJI camera in that it doesn't have the low latency mode and you can only run it in 16:9. Because this is a digital whoop, so it has the Vista, that has the S-Bus all connected to the flight controller. So if you do use the DJI controller, then you don't really need to do anything with this. But it does have the port on the side if you're using Crossfire. Yeah, super simple to wire up. So I've put a tracer in the back here, and the two tracer antennas are just on top there. So hopefully that will be fine. With this configuration, with the naked GoPro and the tracer, it weighs 106 grams. With a 3S 450mAh HV LiPo, that goes up to 147 grams. So we're well under 250, and the fact that you're getting a full HD camera in that weight is pretty cool. So that's the T-Motor Tron 80. When you look at it, it's actually really kind of cool that you can have this much technology in such a small form factor now. This is obviously has a full GoPro, albeit a naked one, but it's like full GoPro HD recording. It has digital transmission with the Caddx Vista, and it's all in such like a tiny, cute little, just really unthreatening package. Really cool. Anyway, let's go give it a test. So there we have it. With the correct tune, the right suggested battery, and a frame that isn't completely destroyed, you can get good footage that can be stabilized with REELSTEADY. You might have noticed though that there was some shakes in that footage, and that is because On the first pack that I took this out, I did actually damage the carbon part of the frame. As you can see here, this arm is broken, and that meant that on certain moves that jello would come back. That does lead me to believe that this is not actually a very durable quad. Even when using 3S, it still is prone to breaking. So probably best not to freestyle with this and just use it for cruising and for cinematic stuff. Another disadvantage is the Nebula Nano camera. Now I did speak about a few limitations of it earlier, but along with that, the image quality just isn't really very good. I wouldn't really want to use it for anything except for like using it to actually fly. Like I wouldn't want to upload that footage anyway. I don't think it's really good enough. But because this can carry a HD camera, it does give this little guy some purpose. So it's important to talk about the size. This thing really is small. Like the smallest sort of Cinewhoop style quad that I flew before this was the Beta 85X. And that wasn't digital, that was analog. And this thing is even smaller than that. So there's two advantages of it being this small. The first one, when you're flying, it's like all of the smallest gaps that you can see, they just kind of get bigger. They feel bigger because your physical size is so small, which means that like all these different lines open up to you. Add to that the fact that it's digital as well, so you get that added confidence and that clarity, and the sort of sense of exploration with this thing is just terrific. The other advantage of the size is that it takes so little bag space, so much so that you don't really need to think about whether or not to take it with you. I can totally see myself just strapping this to the side of my bag, leaving it there. It uses the same batteries as my toothpick, so I don't really need to think about that. And yeah, just having it as a really nice little sort of B-roll machine. Yeah, you could definitely use it just as like a complement camera when you go out on those sort of freestyle day trips. So that just leaves the price. This thing is 225 of the Queen's money, so whatever your regional equivalent is of that. And if we consider that the Caddx Vista Nebula Nano kit is about £110, then that means that the actual price for the quad parts of this machine is about 115. Not exactly a bargain, but not through the roof either. It's kind of about right for this level of hardware, but I would say that if you are planning on getting one, make sure you budget for a few spare frames and prop guards, as it does seem that like the slightest imperfection in this thing will negatively affect your footage. Okay, I hope this video was useful to you. Thank you to T-Motor for providing the Whoop. And don't forget, the competition that I'm running to celebrate 10,000 and the new studio is still going. So there'll be a card in this corner here where you can click, check out the prizes and see how to enter. The next video is actually going to be the one where we announce the winners, so get in there before it's too late. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.